Along with individual experts, Surgeon Masters brings you life improvement strategies in 10 minutes. These proven principles and strategies are easy to learn and can be applied immediately, allowing you to practice your best. Here's your host, Jeff Smith.
On this episode of the Surgeon Masters mini podcast, I have guest Alan Reznik, a board-certified orthopedic surgeon, chief medical officer at Connecticut Orthopedics, and a friend and colleague. Alan and I, we've met several times at various meetings, and I think we decided in some way we're a bit different. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks, Jeff. I think different is not a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. Like somehow we've connected, had some great conversations, and you have a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy, but sometimes bringing it out's a lot harder for me. I feel like an introvert working in an extroverted world.
Yeah, and I have a kind of different spin on it. I feel like I kind of know I'm a little extroverted, but internally I feel like an introvert. I have like a dual view of that. I think I'm pensive and laying back, but sometimes I'm actually moving faster than most people can handle.
So my sense is that in the field of surgery and all surgical specialties, there's a really, really big mix of this, and it's probably not black and white. So tell me some of the things that you've learned about the concept of introversion and extroversion, or introverts and extroverts.
Yeah, I think the overriding thing is that they behave differently in situations where communications are important and ideas are being exchanged. So if you think about it, just thinking out loud, introverts tend to need more time to formulate their answers. They're never the first one to pop up with a new idea in a meeting of 5 or 6 people. They're not jumping up and down in your face, and they're just sitting, laying back and thinking. They will tend to agree with the extrovert in the crowd who's taking the lead because it's an introverted position. I'm not rocking the boat. And when put on the spot, they'll tend to agree. They won't necessarily offer up a separate opinion, even though they may have a separate opinion given their chance to think about it. And extroverts will tend to formulate much quicker answers. They'll jump in with their ideas, whether they're right or wrong. They'll ask questions with an implied answer because of the style and the tone of their question. And they can often disagree with you quite vehemently on the spot, even if they're wrong. So those two behaviors are really distinctly different.
I even noticed that I might agree with an expert quickly as an introvert, but I also might, maybe it's the training in medicine or whatever, but I'm kind of trained skeptic, and I'll convey that, hey, you haven't convinced me yet. And you can even share a ton of knowledge and expertise, but I'm going to go away and process that. And over time, I might love your idea, but I didn't give you that impression right away.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty typical. I think that makes a lot of sense. And the other piece of this, which is probably more helpful as a bit of kind of coaching advice for people who have to deal with people in a meeting of both types, is that if you need a good opinion from an introvert and you respect their knowledge base, you want to tip them off ahead of time that the question's going to come up and what information they might need to make a good decision in the meeting, because they'll have that lead time to process and feel a little more confident sharing their ideas. If you have an introvert, a one-on-one with them ahead of time, or a little heads up, or some materials before the meeting for them to review may be helpful. The extrovert, you might want to couch some of their answers with a perspective. They bounce right in, they have an answer. You may want to agree with them immediately. That's valuable information. My friend always reminds me that Japanese culture, if they say yes to you, they mean they've heard you. They don't necessarily mean they agree. Mm-hmm. So you have a meeting with a bunch of Japanese businessmen and you say, this is a great idea. And they say yes, and you think you're going to do it. And that doesn't mean you're going to do it. So I think, an extrovert saying yes and not necessarily agreeing is okay, but you have to give space for them to say what they need to say in order to let the introvert have their time as well. And the introvert, you may have to ask directly for their opinion in a non-threatening way, right? You may have to go out of your way to do that.
Yeah, it makes me think about the effective leader that maybe gives a little bit more time for an introvert to share their opinion and cuts off the time of the extrovert who might want to share their opinion, but keep going. And then there's not enough time for everyone's input. And again, all are valuable. The extrovert's opinion is totally valuable, but so are the others. What other nuances or things do you think, as far as just kind of creating, I guess, collaborative teams or creating a positive work environment, or anything else that's kind of value to surgeons who want to improve their life and practice?
Yeah, I think in the surgeon realm, again, in the operating room, you're probably the extrovert in the room, even though you don't know it. And everyone else is going to be the introvert. So the question would often be, and this came up on the AOS Patient Safety Committee, actually, was sitting on that committee. They asked around the room, it's like, how many people in the room would think if there was something wrong, your team would tell you? And it's surprising how few surgeons actually would raise their hand for that one, because their position of power and extroverted control of the room is so important. It does stifle people from saying things that might be important. And so for the surgeon who's the extrovert who controls the room, or even the surgeon who's introverted controls the room, it's important to have a channel that you are open to hearing everyone in the room's ideas. My joke is in the OR, if the nurse gives you an instrument and you didn't ask for it, I try to figure out how to use it before I give it back, because sometimes they're trying to tell me something that I don't really remember, or they've seen this before and they saw someone else use this particular instrument and might be a good idea.
Yeah,
so,
at least you're processing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's good. So I always try to think, what do I use this for? And then I might try something and might give it back, or I might actually use it, we'll see. Yeah, so I think creating the environment around that the introverts have a space. And another tool might be useful sometimes in a meeting, if you have to run a meeting, is sometimes you just have to go around the room and say like, okay, we heard from A, B, and C. Very short summary of what they said. My understanding is they believe A, B, and C, whatever it might be. Any other ideas? We haven't heard from so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, not to put you guys on the spot, right? Because an introvert will cave, but I really want to have everyone's thoughts on the table. And then once that happens, summarizing all the thoughts on the table for everyone. So the introvert's thoughts don't feel like they're lost. That would be an interesting tool.
So the other thing is, we're not trying to oversimplify this and to say that everything is introvert, extrovert. And we even introduced ourselves as kind of blending person with environment or vice versa. And you highlighted like even an introvert in the role of the surgeon in the operating room might convey an energy of being in control and kind of having that extroverted position. So I'm sure that dynamic varies from situation to situation. I think the sense I'm getting is just noticing how it might apply and noticing where just your understanding of that helps you be more effective in doing what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I agree with that analysis of it. I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. The person who's too quiet in the room sometimes has a good idea, and the leader sometimes has to tease that out.
And you want people to speak up when they have something that they think is quite important, for sure.
I actually got the Unicorn Award from a nurse anesthetist. And I love this little story because I was doing a shoulder arthroscopy and the blood pressure and heart rate went up. And I try to teach the residents this. It's a useful thing as a surgeon. I like to listen to the heart rate while I'm operating, because if I hear it pick up, I'll check and look at the blood pressure, because if I've had some bleeding or there's been a longer case, I want to know whether the anesthesiologist is having trouble or not. And I'm doing a case and I heard the heart rate go up, and it's a shoulder case and they have to keep the blood pressure down for shoulder arthroscopy. And I said, by the way, did the blood pressure go up? And the immediate response was, and I said, stop. It's my fault. I touched the area that I know is where the patient's pain is coming from. And I didn't anesthetize it yet because I don't use a block. I use local. And I said, I was just curious because I really was convinced this is the thing that was hurting them. And I was wondering if the heart rate would go up when I touched it, and it did. So it's totally on me. I caused that to happen. And the response was, Dr. Reznik, you're a unicorn. You're the first surgeon ever who's ever admitted that it's their fault that the blood pressure went up. So I thought that was priceless. But, again, recognizing yourself in the room.
So help us summarize what you think might be a good take-home message for our fellow surgeons and listeners.
I think if you understand the power you hold in the room, you can see how people will respond to that. And a side goal would be like, if you want to be the doctor who, if there's something wrong in your room, they're going to tell you. And if that means pulling out the introverts and allowing them to have space, or calming the extroverts down, or calming yourself down in the room, I make that a goal for yourself to be a more effective surgeon and a better leader to try to figure out how to do that.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you, Jeff.
There you have it. In less than 10 minutes, this is Jeff Smith along with Alan Reznik. Until the next episode of Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More. Ciao.
Now, take 10 minutes and put your plan into action to practice your best.